Hello, friends! Yesterday we read a poem all about what kindness is. Remember, being kind is a verb, and a verb is an action. It's what you do. Today we're going to read a story out of our big book. This is the front cover, the back cover, and the title. The title of this book is Let's Be Kind. And this is the spine. Now remember, this big book is special because it doesn't just have one story, it has a whole bunch of stories. And when I open it up, I see the title page. That's just to remind you of the title, in case you forgot. And when I turn the page again, I see a special place called the Table of Contents. The Table of Contents tells you where to find things. Today, we're going to read another retelling of a story by the Brothers Grimm. The Brothers Grimm were two brothers named Jacob and Wilhelm. They were born in Germany a long time ago, in 1785 and 1786. That's more than 200 years ago. Our story today is called Snow White and Rose Red. And when I move my finger across the page, I see it's on page 24. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to page 24, and there it is. Snow White and Rose Red. And again, friends, this is the title, the author, and the illustrator. Remember, the author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures in the story, and the pictures that they draw are connected to the words on the page. Now, this is a type of story called a fairy tale. Fairy tales are made up of some different parts. Fairy tales have beginning phrases such as once upon a time or once there was that indicate a distant past in a faraway or imaginary land. It has imaginary characters such as dragons, fairies, witches, giants, elves. They have royal characters like kings, queens, princes, and princesses. And they always have a happy ending in which good wins over evil. Before we start, we're going to do a picture walk. While we're doing our picture walk, I want you to look at the pictures and make observations. Think about who the story is about and what you think is happening. Where are the characters and what are they doing? How do they feel? Let's go ahead and do our picture. And that's the end of our book. Now that we've previewed our book, let's get ready to read. The essential question I want you to think about today is, when is it important to show kindness? Our comprehension strategy for today is visualizing. Visualizing helps good readers form mental images as they read to help them understand the text better. Remember, you can use your own experiences as well as your senses as you visualize. It turns the story that we're reading into a movie in your brain. Think about what you would see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. Now, let's read our story. And remember, when we read, we go from left to right, across, and we go from top to bottom.
Essential question. When is it important to show kindness? Snow White and Rose Red by Brothers Grimm, retold by Daniel Munn, illustrated by Olivia Chin Mueller. There once was a woman who lived in a cottage with her two kind and cheerful children, Snow White and Rose Red. The girls often ran about the forest and gathered berries. The hare would eat out of their hands. The stag leapt merrily by them, and the birds sat upon the tree branches and sang. As I read the beginning of the story describing the girls, I am visualizing the forest and the animals in it. I can picture details that are not described in the story using all my senses. I imagine the details from my own experiences in a forest. I imagine the sounds and songs of the birds and the leaves rustling in the trees. I picture in my mind green leaves, red berries, blue and gray birds, a brown deer, and a tan hare or a rabbit. I imagine the touch of the animal's fur and the coolness of the shade in the forest, as well as the smell of the trees. One evening, as the family sat together, someone knocked at the door. "Quick, Rose Red, open the door. It might be a traveler seeking shelter," said the mother. Rose Red went and pulled open the door. It was a giant bear! He stretched his broad brown head through the doorway. Good readers create pictures in their minds as they read to help them understand the text better. When I read page 26, I imagine Rose Red walking quickly to answer the door, expecting to see a tired traveler. Then I pictured the surprised looks on all three family members' faces when a large and scary animal sticks its head inside. I think about when I'm surprised by something unexpected and a little scary, my heart beats faster and I might jump back or scream. This helps me understand what is happening in the story and how Rose Red feels. By visualizing the events, I can understand the story better. Rose Red sprang back. "Do not be afraid. I will do you no harm," said the bear. "I am half frozen and only want to warm myself by your fire." "Poor bear," said the mother. "You may rest here by the hearth. You will be safe from the cold weather." In the morning, the children opened the door. The bear trotted out across the snow into the forest. The bear returned every evening at the same time and sat himself down by the hearth. The family came to expect their visitor each night. They kept a warm blanket ready for him and saved some of their dinner. They never locked the door until after their friend arrived. Spring finally came. "Thank you," said the bear. "You have been so kind, but I must go into the forest and find my treasure. The dwarf who stole it lives below the frozen ground during the winter. Now, as the sun warms the earth, he comes out to steal again." Snow White sadly unbolted the door. As the bear hurried out, he caught against the bolt, and a piece of his furry coat tore off. For a moment, Snow White thought she saw gold shining through it. A short time later, the mother sent her children into the forest to collect firewood. There, they found a big tree lying on the ground. Near the trunk, something jumped back and forth in the grass, but they could not make out what it was. As they came closer, they saw a dwarf with an old withered face and a long white beard. He had snagged the end of his beard between the twisted roots of the tree. The little fellow jumped about, not knowing what to do. After reading this part about the dwarf, I am picturing him too. I picture a very small fairy tale creature with a long white beard. I imagine a twisted brown root sticking out of the ground with rough bark. I can see how the dwarf's long beard can get stuck in the root, and I picture him frustrated and mad because he is stuck. I picture him jumping up and down, back and forth. Even though the story does not describe the sounds he makes, I imagine him grunting a little as he tries to free himself from the tree root. By visualizing the description in the story, based on my own experiences and imaginings, I understand the experience of the dwarf character better. He glared and cried, "Why do you stand there? Come over here and help me!" The kind children tried very hard, but they could not pull the beard free. "You are useless!" roared the dwarf. Then Snow White cut off the end of the beard. The dwarf grabbed a bag full of gold nearby. As he lifted it up, he grumbled to himself, "Rude girls cut off a piece of my fine beard. Bad luck to you both!" And then he swung the bag upon his back and went off. Later, the mother sent her 2 daughters to town. The road led them across a field where they noticed a large bird hovering in the air. It sank lower and lower. "Ah! Help me!" came a loud cry. They ran up and saw that the bird had snatched the dwarf. The children grabbed the little man and pulled until the bird let him go. The dwarf cried, "You could have done that more carefully. You tore my coat." Then he took up the bag of gold and slipped away into his hole. The girls, used to his rudeness, went on their way. On their way home, they surprised the dwarf, who had emptied out his bag of gold. The children stood still and stared at the treasure. "Why are you staring?" shouted the dwarf accusingly. His face became crimson with rage. Here are some descriptive words on the page that help me visualize the story. When I read, "His face becomes crimson with rage," I pictured the dwarf's face all red. And when I compare my mental image with the illustration, I can see that the dwarf's face was much redder than the illustration. Just then, a bear came trotting toward them. The dwarf cried, "Dear Mr. Bear, spare me! I will give you my treasure." The dwarf scurried away while the bear began to gather the gold. The frightened girls began to run away. The bear called to them, "Snow White and Rose Red, do not be afraid." They recognized the voice of their bear friend. Suddenly, there stood a young man clothed in gold. When I look at the illustration on page 40, I see the part at the end with the prince dressed in gold. There's a lot of excitement that happens before the scene. Close your eyes as I reread page 40 and imagine the girls frightened and starting to run away. The frightened girls began to run away. The bear called to them, "Snow White and Rose Red, do not be afraid." They recognized the voice of their bear friend. Suddenly, there stood a young man clothed in gold. So they're taking quick steps away from the large bear when they hear a familiar voice, and it's the voice of a friend they know very well. It's their bear from earlier in the story, and the most amazing part is the bearskin fell off to show a young man dressed in gold. I imagine the bear's fuzzy fur falling off like a coat, revealing a young man in fine clothes made of glittering gold fabric. What a difference that would be. "I am a prince," he said. "That dwarf changed me into a bear and then stole my treasure. I have had to live in the forest as a bear until I could get my treasure back." The prince was so grateful for their kindness, he shared his treasure with them.
That sure was an exciting story. We did our picture walk, we made observations, and we read the words on our page. Now let's go back and check to see how we know that our story was a fairy tale. Fairy tales have beginning phrases such as "once upon a time" or "once there was" that indicates a distant past in a faraway or imaginary land. This story began with "There once was a woman." Fairy tales have imaginary characters such as dragons, fairies, witches, giants, and elves. Our story today had a talking bear and a dwarf. And in fairy tales, royal characters like kings, queens, princes, and princesses appear. And the bear ended up being a prince. And fairy tales always have a happy ending in which good wins over evil. And in our story, the prince shared his treasure with Snow White and Rose Red. And also, he stopped being a bear and turned into a prince. That's a pretty happy ending if you ask me. Now remember, stories can help us learn and understand new words. Let's see how our story can help us deepen our understanding. All right, friends, let's turn to page 27. The word hearth means the floor or space in front of a fireplace. Let's look at our selection and see if that helps us understand it. "Poor bear," said the mother, "you may rest here by the hearth. You will be safe from the cold weather." So remember, the bear was pretty cold and he asked for a place that he could sit by the fire, and she tells him to lie by the hearth, the space by the fireplace. The word expect means to look forward to. Let's see how this sentence helps us figure it out. Let's see. The family came to expect their visitor each night. They kept a warm blanket ready for him and saved some of their dinner. So remember, expect means to look forward to, and we know that the girls are looking forward to the bear coming every evening because they make sure that they keep a warm blanket ready and they save some of their dinner, and they also make sure that the door isn't locked till he comes. All right, let's look at another word. The word piece means a part that has been broken, cut, or torn from something. What helps us understand that a piece means a part that's been torn from something? Let's see. As the bear hurried out, he caught against the bolt and a piece of his furry coat tore off. So we might say that when it talks about his furry coat getting torn off, we know that there, it's a piece. It's just a bit of it. Great job, friends. I had a lot of fun reading Snow White and Rose Red with you today. I can't wait to talk more about it in our pods. I'll see you later.